It's the Score North Twin Show.
The hot stove.
Oh,
is piping hot.
It's cold today. Heat my hands up with the Hot Stove Twins news.
Yeah, it's like, what is it right now? Let's check the temperature. It's probably warmer than it was like 3 hours ago. Could use a hot stove.
It's 3 above on my phone. On my iPhone here in the park.
What's the wind chill right now?
I don't
minus. Let's see here. Feels like, oh man. It feels like 5. Okay, so it feels warmer because it's sunny and the wind is
18 on Friday, 32 by Saturday. It's going to pop right back up.
Let's fire it up. So figured we'd pop in here. The leader of the faithful leader of the Score North Twin Show here, the resident beat podcaster Declan, is honeymooning, but this is winter meetings week, and we figured, all right, let's give you an update on all the things the Twins are doing right now.
Yep.
Which is nothing yet, but they did. So 2 things. A few weeks ago, they did reach the agreement with Michael Tonkin to avoid arbitration. So that kind of set the scene for the offseason.
And then yesterday
they selected right-handed pitcher Iverson Castellano, depending on if we're pronouncing the double L's, in American fashion, from the Philadelphia Phillies in the Rule 5 draft. This is the first time the Twins have snagged a Rule 5 player in 7 years.
Yep.
Now, Terry Ryan used to be good for one. They got Johan in the Rule 5 draft. The Rule 5 draft is basically anyone who's not on a 40-man roster that has enough team control. Like if you've been under team control long enough to be eligible for the 40-man.
Yep.
Or I guess it's if you've had enough team control like after 4 or 5 years, but you're not on the 40-man roster, you are essentially exposed to be plucked from another team's roster. So he has to make the club out of spring training, or the Twins have to give him back to the Phillies. So he'll be a guy to watch.
At half price, right?
It was
I think it's half
30
the
grand
cost
or something.
But then he has to stay on the club all season.
Correct.
Or be so this is very convenient. Let's do the math here. Let's see here. So we can tie up a roster spot potentially with a player who's going to cost next to nothing.
Yes.
Check.
So he's a minimum wage player. Yeah.
Check.
Yeah. And then there's a fee that you pay to the Phillies.
Yeah.
So you got some teams are signing $750 million contracts. Juan Soto, the Twins have not done anything.
Sox.
The Red Sox.
Big trade for Crochet.
Yep. And then the Yankees with Max Fried, right?
Yeah.
$200 some odd million.
That's a risky contract because Max Fried has dealt with a lot of injuries in recent years.
Didn't that kind of feel like, damn it, we lost out on Juan Soto. We have to go do something to get the fans excited immediately.
Let me throw this at you for a little bit of reckless speculation on this cold reckless speculation Thursday. One of the players that it sounds like the Yankees were losing out on quickly because their intense focus, rightfully so, was on Soto. Brewer shortstop Willie Adames, who went to San Francisco. The Yankees' plan was to try to sign him and move him to third base. Shortstop going to third base. So they lost out on that one. Didn't happen for him. What other shortstops could be potentially obtained, who could be moved, and maybe rightfully so should be moved if they have foot problems to third base, Phil Mackey?
I mean, it's less ground to cover. So, let's go through some of the key quotes here. There's a few different subjects we can get into. You brought up Correa here, so let's go through.
I never said his name. I'm spitballing.
So, Bobby Nightingale from the Star Tribune, he talked to Falvey and also Scott Boras. Scott Boras now has a branded backdrop for his press conference.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
When old Macadac used to cover the winter meetings for a few years back in the early days of Target Field, and I would also go to this. There was always a Scott Boras press conference on like Wednesday or Tuesday, and ordinarily he would just find a spot outside one of the ballrooms in the hallway, and people would gather around. Now he's got like a step and repeat branded Boras logoed background and stuff. It's awesome. So. This is what Falvey said about Correa. When he was on the field, he was one of the best players in the game. When he was on the field is, like, obviously. But that's a qualifier that it can be fighting words if you say that about a player.
Sure.
I'll just say that.
Sure.
He's a leader. He's a key member of the clubhouse. Obviously, you expect teams to call on players like that, especially with where we are and some of the conversations we're having with other clubs. But we want to win, so a high bar is set. Okay, with where we are, I think meaning financially, right? I'm just dissecting here. We get calls on a lot of our players, some that we have to listen to, some that we hear the conversation. Or some that we have to listen and we have to hear the conversation. Some that go absolutely nowhere, but the guys you would expect teams to call on. In light of the team's sales situation, some of the dynamics around our roster or otherwise, I think there are enough teams checking in. What we tell every team is, listen, we're open to being creative. We can't rule anything out before we hear it, no matter who the player is. That's a lot of words.
Yep.
To say, I'm gonna try and do the GM speak, the Falvey speak translation here. I think what he's saying is we are still prioritizing right-sizing our business so the Pohlads can sell this team and have the books look a little more balanced. And Carlos Correa is only on the field as a part-time player, and he makes a lot of money. So yes, we are open to those discussions. And if there's any other teams that want to call us, we will not necessarily rule out your phone call. Scott Boras was asked, is Carlos Correa happy in Minnesota? And Boras said, quote, the last time I talked to him, he told me the fishing was good.
Yep.
So, yeah, he's happy there.
Yep. And they're also trying to now sort of walk back that this might be an indication that they would trade Correa, which to me is more of an indication that they are open for business to listen. And nobody said he's not, it's not like he's massively unhappy, right? But this does, I mean, I'm just leaving, let's just say I am leaving the door open that this definitely indicates to me that if the right offer came along, if Correa, because keep in mind, he's got the ultimate hammer with his no trade clause, if he would waive that clause, could he be traded? Absolutely.
What was the point of signing him? I get the first time around, I totally get it. It was a 1-year deal. Yeah, we're coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, it was a one-night baseball stand.
Let's do it for a year. Hell yeah, this is great. We can totally afford this.
Yep.
What was the point of signing him to a 6-year contract? You knew that his foot was you knew that he wasn't going to be fully healthy. It's not that shocking that he's missing some games.
Yep.
But what was the point of signing him to that contract and then turning around 2 years later and potentially, I'm not saying that it's a done deal here, but there's a lot of signs indicating that they are 50-50, maybe more, to trade Carlos Correa here. What's the game plan here? You signed him. By the way, you signed him. You were good. You make the playoffs. You win. Now he was banged up, but you go and win yourself a playoff series for the first time in 20 years.
Yeah.
And 12 months later, we're talking about having done nothing meaningful. They're deconstructing, or at best, I guess, not adding to a team that they should have added to.
Yep.
Fan interest has dropped off. Obviously the Pohlads don't care because they're selling the team. So there's that dynamic. You have ownership that's completely disengaged from long-term winning or short-term winning.
But the team that signed Correa to the contract after he failed his physicals with the Giants and Mets is no longer operating like they were then. Like things have changed completely. Do I think the Pohlads knew 2 years when Correa signed that contract? I don't think the Pohlads had made the decision yet, certainly, to sell.
Yeah.
And when I mean, in retrospect, everything changed. I don't know if there was a come to Jesus with the family or what.
There was. I can confirm that.
So everything changed when Jim handed it off to Joe. When Jim Pohlad, that was not a plan of, okay, this is how we're going to keep the team for a long time. I think that was okay, you're going to take the club now. Let's see how that goes. And then clearly the rest of the kids, who are now in their 40s probably, all said, we don't want to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. And so Joe's been in charge for what, a year and a half now, and now they're trying to sell. And the team that departed the field after they lost in the playoffs to the Astros, or the way that the franchise operated then is no longer operating like that now. I think the Correa move was made in a place of good faith. I think the good faith changed.
That's fair.
And so like what they're doing now, I mean, Derek Falvey is basically running what appears to me, unfortunately too, because they do have young talent, but in some ways it's a sinking ship. It's a sinking ship. It's got an ownership group that doesn't want to own the team. It's got a president in Dave St. Peter who's been there forever, who I think is trying to help the poll ads and facilitate the sale, but he is going to step down. It's got a TV situation, which I don't think they've done a good job at all of having any foresight on. Like, I keep coming back to it because it's huge. I mean, that was once a $56 to $60 million check. Here you go. Mm-hmm. You take this. We will produce the games. We'll get the games on, blah, blah, blah. That's all gone now.
Dude, real quick on that.
It's a huge story, Phil.
They were kind of kicking around a year ago after, like, they had all this goodwill built up and a packed stadium in the playoffs.
Yep.
And they were kind of kicking around then. Should we run it back another year with Diamond Sports Group? That's the easy path, short term. Take a check, even if it's, 75% of what it was or whatever they wound up getting. But that would have been the year in all phases to gas pedal. Okay, we've got goodwill here for the first time in a while. We've got a superstar in Royce Lewis.
Right.
We've got an ace in Pablo Lopez, and we've got all these things.
Yep.
Let's, even if for short-term loss, I mean, hell, Glenn Taylor did this with the Timberwolves. Let's F it. Second apron. Let's do it. Let's go second apron, even if for a year, and let's lose a bunch of money maybe in 2024-25 to just keep the goodwill and keep fans engaged. Mm-hmm. That would have been the time a year ago to get subscribers to your new Twins TV and to get advertisers on board for whatever your new production is, and to put a good team on the field. And they had a competitive team until they tanked in the second half of the season, but like they slashed their payroll by $30 million, and it was just all of it's just like mistiming, and it starts with ownership and trickles down.
It starts with baseball too. So I was told, and the problem too is, like, if you think about, if we were to do a graph of the goodwill eroding, right? I think the start of that graph is actually this. We are going to get our games. There are going to be no blackouts for 2024. Blackouts are done, because blackouts are a huge problem. And all of a sudden you had a fan base that was like young enough to be like, we can't watch you. Like, we're not going to get cable and get Bally Sports North. Mm-hmm. And so they said, you know what? We're going to solve this. No blackouts. Corey Provis goes on a conference call. I am making this move based on the fact. And what I've been told subsequently happened was baseball came back to the Twins, of course, late in the game, and said, we're really not prepared to help you yet. Go back to Diamond. And the Twins are like, oh. And so the Twins, and I'm not absolving the Twins here either, but I'm just saying, if you think about the game plan here, and that
so Manfred all the way down through baseball, MLB Productions,
because I think Manfred and the boys at MLB were helping San Diego, they're helping Colorado, they're helping the Diamondbacks, and it's somewhere they decided we're not prepared to take on more teams.
Yeah.
Well, okay. The problem is now blackouts are back on. The problem is Comcast yanks them off their air in May. Like, a lot of the disintegration of goodwill that preceded the on-field meltdown was based on TV, including the fact that they played their best baseball when Comcast wasn't carrying Bally Sports North.
No. If a tree falls in the forest, if a bat is
people lost interest when they were good,
flipped
Phil.
On a home run.
People lost interest when they were good, and then you come back and you're like, oh, hooray, the Twins are back on. Unless you were already so pissed off you didn't care, and they collapse.
Let me ask you this before we get to some other like news pertaining to this year's team.
Sure.
Because it's kind of crazy because there's like these micro conversations about the 2025 Twins and what they might look like. But the macro conversations are so much bigger, and that's the infrastructure that leads down to the micro.
Yep.
Do you think there's any chance that they pull a pleasant surprise and make a big addition to this team? for 2025?
-5. No, I don't think there's any chance.
I'm not saying they won't make a trade of some kind or a personnel move of some kind.
Yeah.
But
I think there's a better chance that it turns out that, and keep in mind, its sources, nobody on the record has said the payroll is not going to change, which is not great because it came down by 30 million. I think there's a better chance it does change and comes down more. I think there is zero chance of an addition that makes you say, oh, holy cow, now I'm re-engaged. And like, we love baseball, and it's hard right now. So no, I don't know what your opinion is. I think that they will make trades. I think there's zero chance, though, that it's some type of impactful financial, this player, wow.
I think they are in a holding pattern for any big splashy moves financially. If they can get, Falvey used the word creative. You use the word creative when you're looking to save or maintain payroll while still keeping your team competitive. That's the context in which you use the word creative. So again, another way to translate what he's saying is we're definitely not adding payroll. We might have to reduce payroll, but if there's a creative way we can do that and still be competitive, and they have enough talented young players with a couple more on the way too, that if they click, that I'm not predicting that they're like a last place team. I think there's a chance they still fight for a playoff spot in 2025. If Lewis stays healthy and clicks, if Brooks Lee's bat comes along,
if I do agree with you.
Yeah, but a lot of those ifs are really talented young players that should be coming into their own, which leads me back to the micro here. Rocco Baldelli was asked about Royce Lewis potentially moving to second base. Now, they threw him out there a couple times last year, and he was not happy about it. He voiced his displeasure to the media and talked about how, I don't feel comfortable out there. I'm going to train wreck a game. Give me an offseason, and give me a fair chance to learn second base. But he was just not having it. And on one hand, I see the argument of, dude, just be a good teammate and figure it out. You're an athlete, you'll figure it out. But on the other hand, it'd be nice to have 6 months of an offseason or 4 months of an offseason, take some ground balls and look at it from a different perspective.
Yep.
But Baldelli said he talked to Royce this week. Royce actually says he's been taking balls on both sides of second base. That tells you a little bit about where his head's at. I've been getting some work done at second just in case. And he added, and I'm paraphrasing here, but Baldelli added something a couple sentences later where he basically said, we don't, with things up in the air with our roster.
Yes.
Well, the infield isn't up in the air, right? Right now, the infield is not up in the air. It's Carlos Correa at short, Brooks Lee or Royce Lewis at third. I would say Royce Lewis or Edward Julian at second, and first base kind of just whatever. If you're gonna, maybe Miranda's over at first base, right?
Yeah, that's uncertain.
But the uncertainty that I feel like he's alluding to is, again, Carlos Correa related. That's my read. None of them have said it. Right. None of them have said he's openly being shopped.
Right.
But everyone's kind of tap dancing around with these code words. And I think they're talking about Carlos Correa.
That's how I felt too. And I think it came, and we did not hear the tone of Rocco's voice here, so I'm interpreting a little bit. But the other thing is, the end of that quote read to me as a bit of frustration. We need to figure out what we're going to do here pretty soon.
Yeah.
I'm being hung out to dry here. But I also was frustrated by this. After we went through the whole Royce thing, right? And I'm with you. I see it both ways. But Royce is, for lack of a better term, I think it's fair to say he's prickly. He's prickly.
He is prickly.
He's he's probably a perfectionist. So he sort of wants to know what he's doing, which again, I don't completely blame him. Adaptability for an athlete is probably good. But anyway, long story short, after that whole thing, you didn't send him home with a plan. He is now on his own. If we're to take the quotes at face value, he is decided he's going to take some balls at second base, but the Twins didn't say, you need to work at second base. I'm very confused. I'm very confused because basically deducting how Royce is as a person is not that hard. So I would think if it was a big deal that he was going to play second because he was not comfortable, But then he said, but I'm willing to, that you would say, okay, you know what? When you come to spring training, plan on playing second base.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say this too, and just going through some of the other reports, Bobby Nightingale, you kind of alluded to them walking it back, and Bobby Nightingale reported that the speculation surrounding Correa's availability in a trade was overblown this week. Twins officials indicated, so the Twins are kind of walking it back. I think he's on the block. I don't think they're just going to dump him because they don't have to just dump him.
Right.
He'd still sell the team for $1.5 billion, whether he's on the team or not.
Right.
But if they are out of it at the trade deadline, and let's say he's raking and hitting 300, and the Yankees have a hole or somebody else has a hole, I think this is going to remain a conversation. And I don't know why he would, if they're not competitive at the deadline.
Yeah.
I could see him saying, "Come on, guys, I'm not getting any younger here."
I also am very concerned about his feet, his legs. I am very concerned now. Like, this is, first of all, we have seen plantar fasciitis in this town a lot. Like, it's been weird, but we've seen it a lot. I have never heard it in back-to-back years in 2 different feet. No. And the other thing is, Falvey threw in the from Dallas. He threw in he called Nick Paparesta and said he feels better than he did a year ago coming up, which to me is, hey, everybody out there, all you teams out there, he feels better than he's. I'm very concerned about Correa, especially playing shortstop. Again, it's a credit to him. He's phenomenal. But if you consider the amount of ground he covers, like all of the balls he gets to at short, which is an awesome thing to have. But if you're doing that on a ankle that ain't so good or a leg, that's a lot, which is why I go back to, I actually think that he probably should move to third base sooner than later. So there's just a lot of, because I'm with you, they've got prospects. It's not like they've got a terrible team. There remains a lot of weird around this team, unsettled around this team.
And maybe number one of which is the fact that starting in January, when Dave St. Peter steps down from his full-time official role as president and into a consulting role, you have the leader of the baseball operations the last 7 years, Derek Falvey, also stepping into the team president role. So he will be you'll have Derek Falvey overseeing business and Derek Falvey overseeing baseball operations.
Yeah.
And if you thought he used a lot of vagues, if you thought he said a lot of words to say nothing as the baseball ops guy, you're going to have situations, especially like this year, where, hey, you maybe need to take a step back baseball operations wise because of business reasons over here. But then also you're trying to keep fans excited about the product on the field because your business relies on fans loving your product, spending money on your product, investing in tickets and a TV package, a streaming package, and $15 beers and whatnot. To have to sort of like walk both of those lines as the same guy, it's going to take. There's not many people that get that much power in a baseball organization.
No.
That's a lot of responsibility for one guy to take on.
And he's working for a group that largely desperately wants to dump the team.
Yeah.
Like, that's my thing. And keep in mind, too, your television revenue from this venture is going to be minuscule compared to what it was previously. Minuscule. That's a business operating loss that is enormous.
Yep. Well, unless you slash a little more payroll, then you
that's why I'm
saying it. He could right size it a little.
That's why I'm leaving I would not be surprised if when we see the opening day payroll, it is not 100, and I believe it was approximately 30 million last year.
You know what? If we see a profitable I don't care about wins and losses anymore. If we see a profitable balance sheet, we should throw a parade, hang a banner for this team.
I like to see the balance sheet.
Let's celebrate. I want to see it.
I'd like
Profit,
to see the
yes.
We're gonna right size. Oh, we should redo the song. We're gonna
right size.
That's what we are here for.
We'll workshop those lyrics. Yeah.
I like it.
So that's what's been happening at the winter meetings.
God,
Not a whole lot
depressing.
to report on the Twins front. We'll see what they continue to do here. Usually after the winter meetings, baseball goes pretty quiet through the holidays, and then maybe in January things pick up, but we'll see. We'll see.
Well, speaking of quiet, it's been quiet since the season ended, so might as well stay quiet.
Yeah. So, all right, for Dex, he'll be back next week, and we'll get a random twin of the week back in the mix here. Sports Dad Judd, I'm Phil, and this is the Score North Twin Show. See you guys.